You also started as a reporter at Jerusalem Post. You were doing some stuff.
So I was doing that before I made Aliyah. That was like the summer I was working here and deciding that I was going to make Aliyah. I was a reporter back in New York at the Staten Island Advance for years on and off throughout university. I loved going out, I loved interviewing people, I loved writing up the stories and submitting them to the editor. I loved all of it.
Give us some examples, like the biggest learning curves that you had or the biggest challenges that you had.
I will say that part of entering into that role kind of blindly was I was a manager for the first time. I like a mentor approach. I'm clearly not a micromanager. Like, that's definitely obvious to anyone who's ever worked with me.
Even for the lucky few that actually go through and come out the other side having sold the company, most people even when they exit, they're not making huge amounts of money.
Yeah. If they're lucky, they're selling for parts and not completely flopping.
Welcome to another episode of Talk with the Scot. I'm here with a very special guest, and probably the first person I met when I moved to Israel 23 years ago, Liz Cohen.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
So I've come in Tel Aviv to your offices. We always have a chat about management, leadership, your career, the challenges that you've gone through.
Sure.
We're definitely going to talk about the world of the VC.
Yep.
And there's a lot to unpack there. But you moved to Israel.
Yes, I moved to Israel in 2005. I came here with like a bag and honestly nothing else. Didn't know what I was going to do career-wise. I knew that I was going to get a second degree in conflict management. That's about all I knew. Messed around for a little while, met Renan, my husband, within, I guess it was 9 months, 10 months at Merkaz Shemim. And things kind of fell into place after that. I started my second degree, but I also was looking for a job. And the job I ultimately got was at a tech company in Jerusalem called Answers.com. And literally what I had done was applied to everything I could see. I had nothing. I really didn't know what I was going to do. Wasn't getting any callbacks or anything. I pasted my CV onto like a listserv at the time. That's like a very old term. And I just said, hey, here's my CV if anyone's looking for somebody who can write, basically. And I got a call, and that was it. I got the job at Answers.com, working in what was then called guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
Also dating me a little bit, and that's how I ended up in tech, basically.
Your MA, conflict management and negotiation.
Yeah.
That's good for a mother of four to have.
It's good for probably anyone to have.
Yeah. But you also started as a reporter at Jerusalem Post. You were doing some stuff.
So I was doing that before I made Aliyah. That was like the summer I was working here and deciding that I was going to make Aliyah. I was a reporter back in New York at the Staten Island Advance for years on and off throughout university. I loved it. But it was literally before journalism changed forever it was pre-internet basically. I mean, maybe there was like a very basic website, but it was not anything like what we came to know. I loved going out, I loved interviewing people, I loved writing up the stories and submitting them to the editor. I loved all of it, but the summer I worked at the Jerusalem Post, I realized it's actually where things are going, and also in Israel, this is not actually for me. So I knew that I would be dropping that and pivoting, but I also knew that I had spent a lot of time, both in my university degree and as a reporter, learning how to write, but like really learning how to write. It's really learning how to communicate ideas and thoughts and facts. And I can say that that's honestly what's led me throughout this entire thing for the last 20 years. Like, that did give me the foundation of what I ended up doing.
I remember you when you were at Answers.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember two things.
Yeah.
Number one, I think Answers.com was going to be sold.
You
went through that whole, and then something happened and it wasn't sold, or it just sort of died.
Yeah,
it died.
It was acquired and they closed the Israel office. That's what happened. So it got shipped out in the States, and like everyone in the Israel office moved on, basically.
Okay. And I also remember that you were one of the very few people that I knew then that was like keeping like an online journal or something. You were just very visible online, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I say it's interesting because you're also quite a private person.
That's true.
But you put a lot of stuff, like why you're a private person, for example. I don't think you post any pictures of your children.
Yeah.
Like you always cover their face.
Yeah.
for you personally,
Yeah.
you'll put a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
How do you...
That's a really good insight summary. No, so I'll tell you that when we were coming up in this, new internet Wild West back then. So I actually became a blogger in 2004 because a dear friend of mine at university, we had already graduated, said to me, hey, you're planning on moving to a new country and you're a good writer, like you should start a blog. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was a live journal, which also really takes you back. It was live journal, which rest in peace. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I started doing it. And I think what happened at that time was like people took blogging really far. And it was also when I became a parent, it was the era of like the mommy blogger and people were saying everything. And I just felt like I had to have a line between one day my kids will grow up and like it's not fair to do that. And also like, I don't need to put all my stuff out there, but the reason I started the blog originally was I just wanted people to like see what it was like to move to another country, especially Israel. Obviously that was the theme of it, is moving to Israel, making Aliyah. And if they could learn from my mess ups or my experiences or whatever, great. And so that's the vibe, like that's the tone where it came from. And I think that has just been my tone online in public. And I do like to keep boundaries for sure. And then when I finally did get on like Instagram where everything's actually just pictures, I still kept things relatively, I think it's I think maybe those of us who grew up without internet and then flipped to the internet, we know the healthy lifestyle of like pre-internet, which like our kids might not ever know.
No, I often say to my kids.
Yeah,
wow.
We have to teach our kids that.
No, but I also say to them,
if
the internet was around when I was younger, it'd be a nightmare.
The pictures, the videos, forget it. Like there are some things that are better to just keep inside. Those memories.
Keep it here.
Discuss it with old friends.
I very much agree. So after answers.com, if I'm right in saying you transitioned into our crowd.
No, so between Answers, I actually worked for my old boss at Answers with another, some of our old team. We had a 2-year stint as a marketing agency where we were working with very, very early stage startups on their very initial, back then, like, now we would call it like a content manager or something. It was all different back then, but it was basically blog content, social media. That was very new to build content strategy with a blog. Like this was all new stuff. So I was doing a lot of that side of their initial sort of brand building, which again, we didn't even call it that back then, but making sure that they had a voice. Also their websites, video was fairly new. We were doing videos. Actually, that's how it started, was as a video agency. So it was a lot of the building blocks of when you're starting out as a startup, building up a brand. It was both consumer and B2B, so there was a lot of variety. But we did that for a while, and then I went to Our Crowd, and that was a whole other thing.
But basically, that's around that time is when you started to gain an insight into the VC world and interacting with founders and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, so when I got to Our Crowd, I actually had no idea what I was stepping into. Like, it was a director of marketing position. That was something I understood, but the whole VC side of the table was a mystery. I had no idea what anyone was talking about previously when we were talking about investors and fundraising. And so that was all new, literally new vocabulary, new concepts, how this works. Something that in the beginning, at least, I didn't really get because I wasn't on that side of the table was like, how are the startup founders thinking about this? Like, what is their side of the table like? Like, what are they worried about? How are they pitching, etc.? And so initially, I really had to learn the landscape of what all this venture capital situation is like, obviously, especially in Israel. Although we were investing in companies all over the world, but like it was a huge education. And then slowly over time, I was there for a while, it did shift where I started talking to the founders more about what they're building and working with them on their pitches, because Our Crowd is an equity crowdfunding model. So it wasn't just like, okay, we're choosing to invest in you. We're choosing to invest in you, and then I have to turn around and sell that investment to a whole bunch of other people. Yeah. How do we actually frame that makes sense? How do they connect to what you're trying to build? How do we show this is a good investment, et cetera? So there was a lot of back and forth, both literally on like, how do you pitch and how do we sell this concept? And then, how do we build you up? How do we give you opportunities to shine, et cetera, which was also something we did.
So massively stepping out of your comfort zone.
Oh yeah, for multiple reasons. I mean, I really went in blind. Like I had gone from like blog and websites for like early startups, and it's very nice, and you can talk to the founders very comfortably, and like, you know, oh, what are you building? Very cool. And we have conversations all the time, to like massive, just a huge portfolio, and I'm working with a lot of people, but also being on the VC side, like we had our own, you know, priorities, and like now I'm suddenly like, okay, I have to do what's right for the VC, and you have to do what's right for the portfolio. It's a very complex situation to be in, especially as a marketer. And at the time, that wasn't a very common thing either.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
We're trying
Absolutely.
to be a balancing act.
Yeah.
And it's funny, just a couple of weeks ago, I went and gave a presentation to a client. And I remember sitting there and I'm talking to a room of, you know, the CMOs there. We're talking like it's a big company.
Yeah.
Been through 3 or 4 rounds of funding.
Yeah.
CMO, VPs, a whole lot, 20 people or so. And they're looking at me and I'm giving a presentation about, you know, search and AI.
Yeah.
And as you know, I've been involved in that game for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there and I'm talking, and I started thinking to myself, why are they all listening to me? Like, I don't, like, look how successful these people are.
Yes.
And they're all watching me,
Yes.
and they're all looking at me.
Yes.
And they're taking what I'm saying as like the gospel.
Yeah.
Like, proper imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Oh man,
So-
I totally identify with that.
It must have been, you know, going back to that transition
Yeah.
and that change for you,
Yeah.
there must have been loads of times when you're sitting in meetings or just at home thinking, I'm sorry of my depth.
Yeah, 100,000%. I would say the theme of my tenure at Our Crowd was imposter syndrome, and like not understand, even when there was success, like not always being able to explain like what I had to do with that, or what my role, what it means that I played a part in that. And it wasn't actually until I got to my next job, which is here at Fets, that I started to put the pieces together. Like, actually, first of all those years in the trenches when you're figuring it out, you don't realize it. You can't because you're in it, you can't see it. But now that I can look back and I have 2 decades under my belt, it's like, shit, I was really, really learning all the time. And all the beatings I was taking, they did something, and all those scars, etc. So I couldn't see it at Our Crowd, but looking back now that I can remove myself and take bits and pieces and say, I can apply that here, I can do that now. I don't do that anymore. I don't think that's the right way to do it. It's really amazing how, you know, like they say, working out, it's breaking muscle, building it back. Like, that's really what it is.
So give us some examples, like the biggest learning curves that you had, or the biggest challenges that
Sure.
you had.
I will say that part of that, of entering into that role kind of blindly, was I was a manager for the first time. I hadn't managed anyone before, maybe like freelancers, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
So suddenly I also inherited a team, which was, it has its own thing. And it was small back then, maybe it was 2 or 3 people. But yeah, I had to come in with a lot of humility. Like, I really didn't know, look, there are inside jokes, and there are cultures, and there are challenges that I don't understand and I don't know. And I need to actually work with these people to learn the game. And once you get to a point where you're comfortable as a manager in the, you know, with the executives, with the people that are reporting to you, with the other teams, you still have to have some humility because they got you here, frankly. And even if you're hiring new people, don't forget, like, they helped you out. And so there's a delicate balance also of like, okay, you've been here longer, you've shown me the ropes, I need to do that transition of like, now I'm gonna maybe change some things or whatever, and then you have to explain it really well, and you have to lay out your rationale and your way of thinking and have buy-in that they can subscribe to this. And so that stuff, on the other hand, I've been on the other side where I was there for a while, somebody comes in, they have their way of doing it, completely different story.
Yeah.
So for me, what I found that worked was like definitely humility, definitely being able to say like, okay, I don't know everything, and together you're gonna show me things I need to know, and then also together I'm gonna introduce new ways or different things, or by the way, the executive team is going to tell me things that we need to do that you might not understand, and my job is to explain it to you. So it's a two-way conversation. But managing in general, that was new. And what I also realized over time, trial and error, there were people that were easier to manage, harder to manage, people I clicked with better, obviously hired, they left. Like, But what I realized over time is I like a mentor approach. I'm not clearly not a micromanager. Like that's definitely obvious to anyone who's ever worked with me. I prefer a situation where you have a bunch of skills, I have a bunch of skills. They shouldn't overlap too much, and you're gonna go and do the things you do, and you're gonna come ask me questions, and we're gonna brainstorm, and like at the end of the day, we can all look back and be proud of stuff and feel like we did it. And it did take, like all of this, it took a ton of trial and error, and I have to say, I didn't always have great role models above me, and sometimes it was like do the opposite or learn from other people or go figure it out. But I came at it knowing like, okay, managing is a tough word, and I prefer to see myself in sort of a mentor-manager role, like give you something, not just expect.
Did you enjoy that role of managing people?
Yeah, I enjoyed the aspect of it especially when I could bring on, because mainly I was bringing on fairly junior people who were early in their careers. My favorite is to bring someone on who's fairly early, wants to learn. A lot of times even now, like straight up in an interview, I'll be like, listen, like, if you're interested in expanding your toolkit and sharpening skills and learning new skills, like that's what this is. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Like you want to gain and learn and grow and you're coming with that attitude, I'm happy to give you that. And so I really enjoyed seeing that like light in someone when they realize like I'm good at that, or like I really like doing that and I don't like doing that. And in my next job I'm gonna go this way, and like being a part of that process for them. That's why I like working with like younger, earlier career people. It's actually fun. And the ego, it's like, listen, if you come with an ego, that's your personality, fine. We probably won't get along. But working with people on the same level or whatever, it's like you have to, and suddenly you have to navigate other people's experience and ego and learnings and mistakes and what they think they're good at. So I really enjoy
coming with an ego's okay if they can back it up.
Yeah. I mean, obviously experience, all of us, we have our scars and whatever, like, if we're not learning from that and we're not actually applying it, what are we doing? But also, I like to say also about startup founders, like I think there's a delicate balance really early on, I'm talking, like when you're really just starting your company, where you need to have the confidence to know that what your vision is makes sense, and you can convince people that your vision is good and makes sense and they should get on board with you. So you need to have, I don't know if that's like ego-driven or confidence or whatever, let's call it like confidence and a solid base, but you also need to come that early with a bit of humility, because you're going to pivot. Like you have the why down or the vision down, but the how is going to go like this, and it doesn't matter. You could be cyber and going by the playbook, and there is a cyber playbook, and that's fine, and like okay, fine, step, Series A, but you will take some punches, and you will have to pivot, and you're going to talk to a few executives or buyers, and they're going to tell you, actually, I would never buy that, and you're going to have to rethink it. So you need the perfect combination, and it's not easy. Especially if, you just came out of like, you're showing my time or whatever, and like time to start a startup, like you need the combination. And I think if you have both of those things, then I think it goes for managers too. Like
that's actually something I was going to ask you, because we obviously work with a lot of like early stage startups. You guys here will get to see them earlier than we do.
Yeah.
Once you've answered, I'll share my experience.
Sure.
But what characteristics do you think a founder really needs to bring to the table, outside of the idea?
Yeah, of course. I think that everybody talks about agility and flexibility and all that, and it's true. And I'll say that like this could be interpreted, I deal with this myself, and I've noticed it in founders. There's this perfectionism, procrastination, two sides of the coin, right? Like, I need it to be perfect. I want it to be great. And like, you might never get to it because you're so making excuses, or you're looking around, or I'm not ready yet. We're not ready yet. We have to hold on. We're not ready to launch. So the founders I really enjoy working with are the ones who, maybe that's not even their tendency, or maybe it is and they've recognized it and they're able to say, you know what? We have to just do stuff. Like, we're not going to do it stupidly. We're not going to just be dumb about it. We're not going to blow our capital on t-shirts. But like, we need to do stuff so that we can get to the next stage. And if we don't do some of this now, or we don't just try this and mess up, we're not going to get here. So you want someone who can recognize what makes sense to take those little steps and those little risks on, and spend a little money to fail a little bit here, so you know you can get there and you'll move ahead faster. And you just need someone who does have that right formula of like, we can't be afraid. We have to come out and do it. It's not going to be perfect right away. you know, like I've worked with founders where like they're spending so much time on the font on the website, and then I know like, okay, this isn't good. Like you have too much time, or you're not recognizing that you're like in a battle here, and other people are doing it at the same time, and you need to get there first. Like, yeah. Like so you want the person who's like, okay, we have the MVP, we have the, you know, we're gonna just like start. People are gonna tell us this is shit. That's okay, because we're gonna just flip another switch and we're gonna try it that way, and we're gonna keep going. That I would say, and then the second quality of founders that I think is incredibly important is like you can work with them. Whether the you is the co-founder, the people under them in the beginning when you're like 6 people and you have to figure it out, the VCs, the potential buyers, like anybody, people they work with, freelancers, like if they're easy to work with, and that means like they can manage their expectations and they are just frankly not assholes, and like, you know, different people need different chemistries, but like at the end of the day, if they can be worked with, because at an early stage company, honestly, it's cliche, but the people are everything. And half the time, let's say in this room when we're debating companies, can you work with the team? What's the team? Before they have a product, before they have anything else, can this team do it? Yeah. That's essentially what the question is.
I think early stage, they've also got to be open to very honest and direct feedback.
Yeah, 100%. Because of the feedback. So after capital, the next thing they really need when they're that early is to meet people as fast as possible and get feedback as fast as possible, because some of those will turn into their first paying customers, and that's honestly our job. Once they get the check, get the feedback as fast as possible. So like that is part of what I do. I'm just hooking them up with the right situations in the right rooms and the right people so they get that feedback.
So I had a conversation I'm certainly not going to name any names, but I know somebody that you know, very early stage company, had a call, this maybe like 9 months ago.
Okay.
And he's going through like, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and he's talking through his marketing plan.
Yeah.
And I'm listening to him, nice guy,
yeah.
I'm listening to him, I'm like, something's not, it's just not clicking here.
Yeah.
And I was very honest with him. I said, I think, you know, maybe let's look at this or this angle, and he gets so annoyed. And that for me was like a red flag. I was like, all right, this guy, he's seeing his company as his baby.
Yeah. They live and breathe it. Yeah, that is a hard thing because they really are living and breathing it, and you kind of have to if you're gonna do something like this. But that's where like the balance comes in, and the being able to shift. It is difficult. Like it gets emotional. Like we don't think about it that way in VC and startups. It's a very dry sounding thing, but it's emotional.
Yeah.
You're giving up on a salary job and security for potentially a few years to build from the ground. Yeah.
To maybe.
Yeah. To
maybe.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's such a small percentage of people that actually come out the other end.
Yeah.
And it's really been financially worthwhile.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. But I was talking to somebody, I actually recorded a session with somebody who's also very involved in the VC world. He was making the point, and I think it's highly valid, that so many people that I'm going to set up my own company and I'll just get VC funding. Yeah. And then
I'll just get
VC funding, and a few years later I'll sell, and I'll be, you know, that'll be me set.
Yeah.
And it's such a, even for the lucky few that actually go through and come out the other side having, you know, sold the company, most people even when they exit, they're not making huge amounts of money.
Yeah. If they're lucky, they're selling for parts and not completely flopping. Like that also happens. And I think, by the way, there's something really interesting about a second or third time founder who's failed once or twice before that. And it can go both ways. Look, it could be a systemic thing where maybe they're just not cut out for it, and that's fair and it happens. But some people, they really do learn from that. And they really can be better, smarter. And by the way, some of them can turn into investors and actually know what they're talking about. You don't have to have had some crazy billion-dollar exit to know what you're talking about if you've been in there. Yeah. So and obviously it's personality and different things. But yes, like there's a lot going on there.
I was laughing a month ago or so when Wiz when all of a sudden everyone's talking about
it's like,
oh, you're going to be the next Wiz. No, you're not. No, you're definitely not.
Yeah.
Like no other company, certainly in Israel, has exited for $32 billion. Like,
Yeah, there's no
about
real
it.
playbook for that.
No.
Like, there's a playbook to get from here to here, and then at some point, there's just so many external factors. Like, you can't plan your whole life like that, for sure.
So how do you find, like, when you're working with founders,
Yeah.
and you know it's not going to succeed? Like, you can just see the signs
Yeah.
it's not heading in the right direction.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that on a personal level, but then also dealing with the founder themselves?
I think that, first of all, I do think there's a point where we need to remember they're human. And I think that, like, I don't know, I find that in this ecosystem, a lot of times it's like very titles, right? Like, I'm on the VC side, and there's a founder, and there's a director of engineering, and like everybody's very into compartmentalizing, which obviously is what we do in business, and it makes sense. But when you're working that closely with a founder, when you're in an early stage VC that saw them from the beginning, they're very human. And by the way, I already saw the human side when we started working together because they didn't have anything, and we were literally sitting at a table like talking. And so I think it's really important to remember their people, and they have things. They have, they just had a kid, or they're getting married, or whatever, or they're relocating. Like, they're human people with human things. So always remembering that. And by the way, like, I'm not on the investing side. I'm not the one who's saying no, or like, I'm not the bad guy. So my job also in VC, I'm on the value creation side, whatever that comes with, is also a little bit like a safe space for founders to be a little more vulnerable, because my job is to just help them. So I'm not telling you yes or no, I'm not handing out checks. You tell me you're having a challenge with this, let's see if I can help you with that. So already it's a nice relationship that I have as a non-investor. And then more generally speaking, I think when things start to get super challenging and those founders need to start focusing on what the next step is, like, okay, are we going to be selling, are we going for an acqui-hire? Are we going to be selling for parts? Are we going to shut down? Like, what's happening? I'm already like outside of that, because at that point they need to focus. Like, they need to focus and figure out, who should I be talking to? Am I meeting with bankers, or am I meeting with, like, they really have to start dealing with the red light situation. And then it's like, okay, like, if you need me, I'm here. But that's a part of a founder's life cycle where they just really need to like figure it out, and I'm already in the background at that point. But we stay friends.
No,
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah.
Let's talk about mistakes, common mistakes from founders.
Yeah.
Because I think that there's definitely patterns.
Yeah.
And you can see them.
Mm-hmm.
But in your experience, like, what are the most the three most common mistakes that founders make?
I'm going to make first a broader one, which, by the way, has a good side and a bad side. One thing I see a lot is this copy paste. And copy paste, there's a reason why people do it. It saves time. If it's been proven that it's worked for some other founder in your space, maybe it'll work for me. I don't have a lot of money and I don't have the time, so I got to just like figure it out. So there's a validity to copy and pasting. When I say copy and paste, I mean like literally, like, someone's a little bit ahead of me and did this website, it seems like they're getting traction, I'll just model my website off of that. Or this is the way that founder hired his team in that order, and look at them now, like, maybe I'll hire in that order, like, hey, maybe that'll work for you. But I do think it's important to always keep in your mind, like, I'm not that other company. We're not that company. And by the way, to survive, we have to differentiate from what other companies are doing. Otherwise, so many companies are a dime a dozen. I need to keep in mind that there has to be some specific special thing about us that just makes us stand out. And if it's not in the technology itself, is it in the way we operate? Is it in the way we speak? Is it in our tone? Is it in the way I relate to the buyers that I'm talking to? Is it that I hire in a different order specifically because I want to focus on X and everyone else is focused on Y? There are so many ways to do that, but I would just say that, like, don't get sucked into the copy paste. That to me is dangerous. A more specific mistake, very specific, and I've seen this less recently because I think at least we've shifted in the types of companies we're investing in, so this doesn't come up as much as it used to. But there is a tendency, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when startup founders, B2B, very technical companies hire their first marketer, there are mistakes made. And I think the reason is there's two parts. One, there's a tendency, at least in Israel, I can't speak for outside of here, there's no meaning to the term product marketing manager or whatever. Like, we all know this, right? I'm not saying anything new. Like, product marketing can mean literally anything.
Yeah.
You might mean director of marketing who's just going to run everything until you start having a team. You might mean what product marketing really meant at some point. You might mean content marketer, whatever. So like, they often don't know what they're hiring the first time, and they don't really understand what they need. And by the way, that copy paste comes into play a lot here, because they think like, oh, well, so-and-so just look at that job description, I guess that's what I want. And it's not necessarily the case. So I think they need to really sit and figure out what that means. Talk to other founders, talk to other people, talk to marketers at other companies, and figure out what marketing really means and what you need. And then the other thing is the expectations are completely mismanaged. So you went through a hiring process, you're maybe imagining this person at your booth at conferences, but not dealing with messaging or copy, like, or vice versa. Like, you didn't really, your expectations were here, and you hired wrong. Or maybe you hired a great candidate, but you don't actually know how to work with them. That happens a lot. So I've told marketers straight up who are thinking about working for early startups, it's like, you have to actually, in the interview process, ask them what the budget is, and ask them what, the KPIs are of the meeting, not to know, but to know if they know the answer.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have an answer, red flag. And by the way, they might turn around and say, actually, I'd like to build that with you, and I'm trying to work it out. Okay, something to work with. But the hiring of the first marketing person is a huge issue.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
And the amount of people that I speak to, like founders, or early stage companies that I speak to, and they will say, our main competitors are X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. So we want to just do what.
Yeah.
And I'll always ask the same question, like, how successful do you know that they've been so far?
Yeah.
And very seldom do they have, actually, they've grown year on year by 20%, they've done this, they've achieved that.
Yeah.
It's more often than not, it's, don't know, good. But it looks good.
Yeah. And faking it till you make it, by the way, is a huge part of it.
That's fine.
But don't bank on someone else's fake it till you make it. Yeah, for sure.
The easiest thing to do is build a really nice looking website.
Yeah.
But to then use that as a basis for, we want to be like them, you're doomed from the start.
Yeah.
I want to talk about something that probably a lot of people don't talk about, and mental health within founders.
Sure, yeah.
Because obviously, certainly in recent years, everybody's talking about mental health. And I'm not, when I say that, I'm not belittling. But as you know, I set up my own agency. I went through at one point raising funds for a side project connecting to the company, then swallowed up a UK agency as well, and then ultimately sold my company. But 18 months before I sold it, I remember sitting at the end of my bed and turning around to my wife, literally in tears, saying, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
It is killing me inside.
Yeah.
I've got no patience for the kids, I've got no patience for you, I'm snapping, I'm not enjoying it anymore, I've got to get out of this before I just lose the plot.
Yeah.
And that really triggered me to get out of it. But I didn't feel that there was a network or there was somebody there that I could speak to that had been through that sort of process that I've been through. Do you think that's changed? Because I'm talking about maybe 8 years ago. Has that changed at all?
Certainly, people are talking about it more. And I also do see, there's a VC platform conference for people with my type of role, VC, or no investors, it's all the value creation type of people. And there's always a session on mental health and founders, and you see events and webinars. And actually there's an Israeli VC, State of Mind Ventures, which this is a big part of their platform with founders, shout out to them. And it's definitely talked about more. And I think also with a younger crop of VCs coming up, millennial, whatever, where this has been part of the conversation for a while and older generations were not talking about this, it's definitely on the table. And whether or not it's in your VC values document, if you have one or whatever, I think it's very clear that a lot of us are able to see each other as people in a way that we didn't before. And by the way, with the way social media is, you can also do that. I talk about that. I was having a conversation with a friend about this, how it kind of annoys me that LinkedIn is so people posting pictures of their kids now. I think Corona kind of did that to us and whatever, and I'm just what? This is a place of business, and they're you're old. This is not the world anymore. But the very fact that this is more acceptable and there's a blurred line between personal and professional, we could, it's not necessarily for me, but like, I get it. I get that that's the conversation now. So I think it's easier to see people as humans and they have struggles and whatever. And I think this younger generation of VCs is better attuned to that, which I think is good. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that like, a founder just had a baby. I can appreciate what he's going through and I'm okay connecting with that. Like, he's going to have a rough few months for the next whatever. He's not going to sleep as much, and he's going to grind, and he's going to do what he can do because he's a founder. He chose this life. Like, him and his wife discussed this. Like, this is what it is. And so I think like if we all kind of accept that this is the world now and that it's okay to see each other as people, that's good. I'll say the biggest like hit in the face, just about how human we all are, was after October 7th, and our big thing obviously was to just stop. And while we were all a mess, everyone was a mess, it was also to look at the founders and say, okay, what do you need? Like, is it, help literally with the work, where we can actually help you with your work right now because half your people are on reserve duty and whatever? Is it that you need someone to talk to? Because we actually pulled in someone, like a coach style thing where they can just like talk about how crap everything is and how difficult it is. Managing a company, like keeping this alive while there's a war and you don't have everything you need, but you have a business to run and people need to get paid, etc. Like, there was a lot of that very open talk. And I think between what we went through with the pandemic and that here in Israel, like, it's very clear, it's much easier to talk about these things now. It's not as taboo as it was. So it's definitely improved in the sense that like communication is open and we can see each other differently. Being a founder is being a founder. It's always going to be hard. It's always going to be stressful. Like, that's just part of the job you've taken on. And but maybe the valve's a little looser now with being able to let it out.
You think?
I think there's always going to be, by the way, I say this too, I was talking to someone about this too, where like, again, because of when I came up, when I started having kids, I felt like I can't show my mother's side at work. That's just not a thing to do. Like I remember when we all went to Zoom calls because of Corona, and then like the kid would walk in the room, I would be mortified. Like, this cannot happen. You cannot know that I have another side to my life. But all of a sudden you'd see all these like men with the kids walking in, and it's cute. And like, it struck me very strongly how like suddenly it's like cute and funny and whatever, but like I still carry that stigma to this day. If my kid walks in on a Zoom, I'm still like,
really?
Oh, this is not good. Yeah, it's gotten better, but I still feel there's a wrongness to, and again, it's my age, it's when I came up, I accept that. And the younger generation is like, what are you talking about? Like, it's totally fine now.
But does that go back to you trying to have that split between
Probably I'm
and
generally like that. But I definitely think it's generational also. I think I grew up in a time where like, even as a kid, my dad would take me to his like downtown Manhattan Wall Street office for like, they used to have in the 80s and 90s these take your daughter to work days because they wanted to promote like girls feeling like they could have these types of jobs. So I used to go to those. I actually really enjoyed it, and I credit a lot of where I am to that vibe my dad gave me. But I remember being there, and it was like, really, you could tell the difference between women and men in the office. And as a girl, I was just like, okay, like I get that, like you could feel it. And I grew up with that. I grew up with that thing of like, in the 90s, it was very much like women could do anything, but also like you have to look this way, and you have to be this way, and you have to fit in this way, and you don't talk about being a woman. That really, maybe it's growing up in New York, I don't know, but that really set for me, and I definitely still have remnants of that when I operate in life. Even though I'm in Israel, even though things have changed, even though Corona, like, that has stayed with me.
So you've just brought up about, women in the workplace and that sort of the stigma type. That's definitely getting better.
Yeah,
even,
for sure.
Even
for
in
sure.
sort of a macho type environment and culture. And where do you see it going? Like women in tech, women in VC world, women founders especially? Yeah,
so I think there's clearly a long way to go when it comes to women founders. And I've been saying this for a while, like, unfortunately, whatever it is what it is. But it has to start from like kindergarten. Like, you can't just walk into a high school and put on some sort of workshop for girls in high school and say, hey, STEM, tech, it's for you. Because by the time you're 14, I promise, you've internalized so much crap in life that it's not enough. And like, I go to these take your daughter to work days, and I still knew when I was 10, 12, 14, like, this is not, there's something here. You feel it as a kid. You pick up what's going on around you. So it has to start with the way parents raise their kids. And that's hard. You can't convince everyone, all demographics, to raise their kids a certain way. It's not going to happen. So the more we come up, and I think, again, this is definitely a younger generation thing that'll have this really good, is the more we come up through it and we can turn to our daughters and sons, by the way, equally important, and impart our experience. Or like, my kids, they see me all the time on the laptop, working late hours, under stress, not under stress. Like, they've seen this their whole life. So even if I never said anything to them, and we don't honestly talk about this that much now that I think about it, but they're seeing a lot. So they know their mom was working in a tech world. By the way, my son thinks I have the coolest job in the world, because all he sees is like, I've done things with drones, and I'm doing these, like, I'm meeting these cool startups, and I talk about these founders, and like, to him, it's like, well, okay, that's what my mom does. So it's subtle, and I think it'll pick up. So I do think like things will just keep sort of organically improving in that way because we're exposing our kids to this earlier. And I also think, interestingly, there's a bit of a, I don't want to call it backlash. It's not a backlash, but it's sort of a pendulum swing where like, whereas on the one hand, I felt like, okay, I have to keep everything separate and closed, whatever. And then maybe other women are like, no, I'm going to be out and I'm going to just talk about things and women and equal and this and that. And like everything's very la-di-da and that's totally cool. I do think there's a middle ground of like, by the way, I could just be me. Like, it doesn't matter. And also now, in a twist, now that I'm getting older and I'm getting to that stage of like, I don't really give a shit anymore about what people think, even more so, it's like, all right, so I'm a woman and I'm in a men's field and it's fine and it doesn't matter and whatever. Like, there's a lot of balance and pendulum swinging, and I think in general, everything is moving in a direction where both girls will grow up feeling like whatever, boys will grow up feeling like, yeah, girls, okay. And also everyone could kind of feel like I can be what I am and it doesn't matter.
You just mentioned, and I'm certainly not going down the path of your kids.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there. But you just mentioned your son and talk drones and he thinks it's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have the same conversations with your daughters though? And do they think it's cool?
So they know it. I actually think on a personality basis, my son just is drawn to a lot of this stuff that I'm doing and it makes sense. So what I try to do is, first of all, in general, by the way, with founders, with working with VC partners, with working with anyone who has to be out there in a professional sense, you always want to go for authentic. That's my whole thing. Like when I came here, they had hired me, you know, we need to build our brand and we need to find our voice. And like my big thing was like, I'm not going to force you to do anything you want to do. If you like speaking on podcasts, cool. If you like networking in a room, cool. I'm not going to make you be on a screen. Like, we're going to do the things that are authentically you, that by blasting that and accentuating it, everyone's going to understand who we are. That's how we're going to work. And I feel like it's true for startup founders. I tell it, they come to me and they're like, oh, should I have a LinkedIn? Like, should I be working on my LinkedIn? I'm like, do you want to work on your LinkedIn? Do you want to put yourself out there and make good content? If you feel like you want to do that, let's figure out the best way for you to do that. If you don't want to do that, you'll find another way. It's okay.
It's got to be authentic.
It has to be you. So going back to my kids, it's the same thing. Like, if they're not interested in like cybersecurity at the age of 11, that's totally fine. But if they're interested in like building stuff or doing stuff or whatever, like that's the kind of stuff we encourage. Like we should be encouraging what they want to do and what they're into. And if they, you know, so like one of my daughters thinks that what I do is make videos. Cause like sometimes I work on video content and I edit videos and she'll see my, you know, my program open my laptop. She's like, oh, you're making a video today. And I'm like, yeah, that's one thing I do, but that's the thing she attaches to.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's fine. Like I don't feel like I need to push anything down their throats at all.
Yeah. It's funny because I was trying to, the other day, I was trying to create an image of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
I combined two images actually. And it just wasn't happening, couldn't get it. And I was getting to the stage where I was about to throw the computer out the window.
Yeah.
And I sent on WhatsApp the two images to my daughter who's 12. And I said, see if you can, she likes that.
Yeah,
she's very arty, she's very artistic.
Good.
I said, see if you can figure out a way to do this. This is ideally what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And within 10 minutes, she created like 4 different
that's
options. Awesome. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, that's
so
amazing.
awesome to see that they have things they can do. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
You're also a member of, is it Women in VC? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I do. There is this Women in VC organization that I actually just recently joined, which is nice because it's funny because I think I actually, one time I remember at our crowd, I started like a monthly or whatever breakfast for women in the company to come together, and one of the men, and like they had given me budget, and they were like, yeah, go do it, and it was like we bring in a speaker or we bring in an activity, and it was really cool. And one of the men was like, why do women need these like women things? Like, why, why can't it just be that we're all the same, whatever? And I was like, I totally get you, but to be honest, we're not. And like the experience for us of doing different things is just different, and the way we relate is different, and sometimes it's just nice to like get together in a space where you feel like you can just be open and talk about things and whatever. And I'm like, by the way, go make a men's group. Like, do it. I think it's fine. Like, I think, anyway, so when we have these like women, like I also run we're like also a bi-monthly meetup breakfast for just women in tech and senior roles in tech. Bottom line, it tends to be like a lot of operational marketing, biz dev, COO types product. And we get together and we sit around and we talk about a topic, or we have one of us present a topic, and it's just like, yeah, that's a nice space where we can talk about challenges. And by the way, we're generally never talking about being women or motherhood or anything like that. We're talking about the things we work in. It's just nice. It's just nice to be in a space where you don't like, I can't explain it, but sometimes you're just on your guard, or like you have to think twice or whatever. There's just different chemistries and personalities, and it's like a totally different vibe. Yeah.
So I would agree with you, because I think, we should just accept, within reason,
Yeah.
that there absolutely are differences.
Yeah.
And I know this from my wife as well. That
Yeah.
even, forget on a professional level, even when she's like, she goes to the gym or
Yeah,
she's out running,
yeah.
she says, you have no idea what it's like. I know that I'm being stared at
Yeah.
by men.
Yeah.
She's like, and it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
So in a professional environment, if you're sitting in a room full of like men, women, I'm sure that there are people sitting there and they're not forthcoming with their ideas, or they are, or just their general thoughts or their input, because they don't want to feel that they're just being judged.
And it's also so subconscious in us. We don't even realize it sometimes, which is also why I like these breakfasts and these things, because we don't even know what we don't know sometimes. And like, it's so, animalistic's not the right word, but it's like so in us, it's so native in us that when we walk in a room and it's just women and it switches off and we're not consciously thinking about it, but it does switch off, like, it's nice. You can get a lot done in that situation. And it's funny that you say about your wife in the gym, because my fitness trainer, she runs a studio, and she has classes with men and she has classes with women, and I go to the women ones and my husband goes to the men ones, and she started mixing them. She just does some that are mixed, and she keeps saying, how come you guys don't come, whatever. I'm like, I like being in a room where like, it's all right, it's 5 or 6 women and we don't, like, we're in a different zone. And I don't really need that energy. Like, frankly, men and women are different, and we have different energies and different ways of connecting and collaborating and talking and being, and it's okay sometimes.
But the question is, when a female founder comes into this room, sits, is the approach from you guys different to her as opposed to when a guy comes in?
So again, I think that there's an interesting, like, I don't know if it's a phenomenon, but like, I think in general, when I've spoken to women founders in general, not just here about this, a lot of VCs, especially the younger ones, like, they want women founders in their portfolio because they want to be a part of this change. They want to be a part of encouraging women to start companies and getting funded, for sure. Everybody does. And you want to be able to say, like, yeah, we're this % women founder and we're really for that and everything. At the end of the day, investors are going to invest in a good deal. And it's not necessarily was it a woman or man founder, but I do think there's a disadvantage for women, because even though everyone has good intentions, is something to walk in a room where you have men on that side and you, and even if your co-founder is male, by the way you're being related to sometimes, or like, I remember I was working, this wasn't actually with Huts, but I was kind of working with a company where there was a woman and man founder, and the man was the CTO and the woman was the CEO, and she was great, like what you want in a CEO and everything, and like, and the CTO was the CTO personality, like just a totally different vibe. And so like you can, it's really personalities, but I do think there is something when you come into a room and it's the same old structure of men sitting at a table, and then there are hiccups, or there are, you just kind of, there's a tenseness. It still exists. And I think it's on the part also of women to, we just have to keep working at it, but it's also on the part of the men to figure out what little things they can do to make that a little easier. And again, I'm going back to generational, but I do think men VCs coming up now, it is a little different. Like they do get it better. They grew up in a different environment. So at least there's that.
Okay. Given your background,
Mm-hmm.
like starting off like content, and that still plays a big part in what you do.
Yeah.
Before we started filming, we were obviously talking a bit about AI, amongst a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Where do you see the role of AI within the VC world?
Mm-hmm.
And then it probably comes on to, in particular, content.
Yeah.
And where like the impact AI is having in content.
Yeah.
And, trying to put it all together.
Yeah, it's tough. I remember when, whenever it was, I guess it was some point in 2022 or 23 when like ChatGPT came out and everybody was trying it or whatever, and I was like, this is horrible. Like, I don't know what we're talking about. Like, and I got very stubborn, like, this is my whole life. I've sharpened a career in this. Like, what are you talking about? And I was very like resistant, but very quickly realized, obviously, it's not about creating content in ChatGPT or whatever. Like, there's a lot that goes into having good strategic communication practices, like messaging. Like, it's not, if you think that creating a blog today as a strategy for building your brand and you throw some things in ChatGPT and throw it on a blog, like, okay, that's not a strategy. So at the end of the day, I started out learning in journalism and also, frankly, in high school, how to read something and think about it critically, how to communicate my thoughts on that, how to reject things that can't be backed up and don't make sense, and this is critical, and I fear that we're running out of this one, researching and citing your sources, which, by the way, was also something about journalism that was really changing. Like, it was pounded into me. You cannot write a sentence without knowing you can back it up, or how to quote people properly. And while I don't do that professionally in that sense, it stayed with me writing an honors thesis, going to university, and then working in a job where, like, at the time, you could Google things and see if you're right or wrong, fact check. Like, fact checking and knowing what you're talking about is critical. And unfortunately today, that's really is changing media-wise and in general.
Yeah.
But if we want to create good messaging and really get our points across and make people trust us, trust our company, trust that we know what we're doing, all that stuff still matters. As long as there's people in the equation, that stuff's still gonna matter. So, like, yes, I will now go on ChatGPT and save an hour of my time with a task that the importance level maybe is here, or like, if the importance level is here, I know how to use it to get the background that I need and then work on it. Like, we just have to use these things in a smart way where we're not losing the trust. We're not letting people see, oh, it's copy paste, oh, it's clearly chat, oh, like when you see these LinkedIn posts and they're chat, it's the AI button on LinkedIn. It's like,
Or the long dash.
Yeah, exactly. I was just reading about that this morning.
Yeah.
We need to keep the humanity part of it, because at the end of the day, it's still somebody started a company, and I'm trying to get you, another human, to buy into what I'm selling.
Talk about, because AI.
Yeah.
I was standing in my kitchen about 9 months ago, maybe a bit more, and I said, this is going to put me in an early grave. Because, as you know, I'm now 50.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm literally going back to school.
Yeah.
And having to rethink and redo everything that I've known or learned over the last 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And it's huge, because I agree, it's not just about copy paste.
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
And it drives me mad when I see people just, LinkedIn or anywhere, and you can tell it's just simply copy paste or created an AI, dropped it in.
Yeah.
Pointless, there's no value.
Yeah.
And I was saying to somebody the other day, it very much feels that marketing, we're dumbing everything down to the point where we're not able to read a long form bit of content.
Yeah.
We're not able to, somebody decided that we're not able to watch a half-hour video.
Yeah.
It's got to be 30 seconds, or it's got to be, bullet point format.
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah.
And as somebody that went through, studied journalism, and built a career on it, it must drive you mad.
What drives me mad for sure is the tendency for people to become like unexceptional. Once something works and the whole copy paste, let's just do it, and let's just, that worked there, let's do that here, look, the algorithm says this, like, I do think it taps out at some point. And we've seen it over like, something worked for SEO 20 years ago, and then 5 years later, and then a year later, then 6 months later, there were new standards, new this, new that. So now everything is going to be AI, and everyone's by the way, like the half-life is so much shorter. Even just last week or whenever it was, a couple weeks ago, they made that like you put your picture in one of the AIs and it comes out with that anime look, and I was just like, oh, everyone's going to be doing this now for a month. But by the way, that's going to die out much faster than a month, because there'll always be something new that's coming up that people will ride on, and all the trends. And I just think that, like, bottom line, what always comes out at the end is, again, like some sort of humanity and trust. Because if you're selling something, especially if it's big, especially if it's B2B, that stuff's nice maybe as like a little bait or something, but you still have to have something behind that. And by the way, whether the product is kick-ass or not, you're still going to be talking to a person. You're still going to have to convince them. It's through your words on the screen, or if you're on a call, or you're meeting them at a conference. Like, you still have to be somewhat exceptional, or at least human, in a world of like crap AI. So if you want to take shortcuts and put up some mediocre blog posts for SEO reasons or whatever, great, go for it. Like, don't spend a lot of time on that if you don't want. But you're still going to have to convince people and have a tone and a voice of who you are, and that's still going to take some brainstorming and human aspects. I think people will get smarter at differentiating between AI and not AI. It's going to take time. I mean, I can't speak to video. That stuff scares the crap out of me. The whole deep fake thing and everything, I can't speak to that. But text, I do think and hope we will have to get more creative, because it will all sound the same, and that will be sad, but people will have to rise out of that. Otherwise, you can't be competitive, I think.
I agree.
Yeah.
I have a feeling me and you could talk for hours about so much and so many other things.
Probably.
But I know you're busy. I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
It's the question that I aimed all episodes on.
Yeah.
Failure is a bruise, not a tattoo. Meaning,
that
you failed, you've learned, you've got over it, you've got past it.
Yeah.
Share one example of what you really learned from it.
This is not specific. It's a pattern that I've done for years, and I finally, only literally in the last year, have realized how to overcome it. And it's that I would work on something, and imposter syndrome or whatever, and I'd make a mistake, or maybe it would be successful, whatever it is. I'd work on stuff, and I wouldn't understand that when I go back and someone, a new boss or a new company or a new project comes up, and I know in my gut that it's wrong, because I've literally done it and it failed, or because I know what I'm talking about and it's wrong, and I still don't speak up, or I don't want to, oh, well, they're older than me, they must know what they're talking about, or they're more important than me, they must know what they're talking about. That pattern and trap, it's a trap. I think a lot of people don't realize that you gain experience and then you know things, and not everybody does, and it really took me too long to figure that out. And luckily I'm in a situation now where I'm encouraged to figure that out, but it's only recently that I can say, you know what, no, I don't think we should I know we shouldn't do that, because I've done that before and it didn't work, or I've done it differently and that did work, and this is how we should do it. And so again, when you're young and early, that's really hard, but it is something to work on and figure out as soon as you can, because your career will change, the way you relate to your career and your job, and the way people relate to you will change, because you bring authority and you're doing it in a very, it's not like I know better than you. It's I do know better than you because I've done it, and it's worth listening to me, and I can say no. So really, saying no, or being able to actually flip people and convince them because you've done it, learning how to do that, game changer. And again, it took me too long, and I want people to realize that way younger than I did.
I think that's a great place to stop.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thanks for coming in.
And it's been great knowing you.
Yeah.
23 years or so.
Craziness.
But thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.